We finally got Marvel content. After all these years.
You're alive. You came back. It's been so long. So long.
But in all seriousness, we got the first 2 episodes of WandaVision. I really enjoyed it. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that it's like a masterpiece, which I feel like it's a little too early to judge, but it is super, super good so far. Something that I've been seeing a lot is people just being like confused. And I am too, you know? I'm watching the show and I'm like, I don't understand. Especially if you're someone like me who doesn't necessarily read comics, you're probably extremely lost on a lot of things. I couldn't fall back asleep after I watched the episodes at 3 in the morning, so I did a crap ton of research on characters. If you know like your comics really well, you probably already know everything I'm about to say in this video, so sorry. But this video is mostly for people that are like, the show was great, but what did I just watch? So I'm gonna start out by going through like some characters. So one of the characters we have in the show is Monica Rambo, who is the little girl from Captain Marvel. When we meet her in the show, she gives us a fake name of Geraldine. First of all, she could not, she could have picked an easier name. I'm kind of curious as to why she gives us a fake name. Monica has a lot of powers. If you're one of those people that thinks that Captain Marvel's overpowered, I urge you to go look at all of the powers that Monica has, because she has an insane amount of powers. I kind of touched on her powers a little bit in my WandaVision trailer breakdown that I did like a while ago, a couple weeks ago. So if you're like really interested, you can either look it up on Fandom, which is what I use, or you can watch the video, whatever floats your boat. The one power that I really want to focus on is a power that she has. It's called hypercosmic awareness. And basically what that means is that she is like far more aware when something is like inherently wrong in the universe. She is the equivalent of like when people in Star Wars can like feel a disturbance in the Force. That's like her, that's one of the things that she can do. That's kind of why in the trailers and in the episode we saw, in the second episode, she kind of just always looks confused. When Wanda goes to shake her hand, she looks really confused. Literally like the second I think it's like the second thing we hear her say, she's literally like, I don't know what I'm doing here. The next character we're gonna talk about is Agnes. I'm pretty sure we're like 99.9% sure that she is Agatha Harkness. Agatha Harkness. Correct? Okay. I'm just saying, for someone who's supposed to be a really powerful witch, you think she would come up with a better name. The character Agatha Harkness is like, she's a super old, really powerful witch. Like, I'm pretty sure she's one of the first witches in like the Salem witch trials, I think. Agatha and Wanda are technically both witches, Scarlet Witch. But they're different because Wanda's powers were like scientifically given to her. She wasn't like born with them, in the movies at least. She wasn't born with them. Versus Agatha, who is like a witch. Like her powers aren't from science. Her powers are like purely magic. It would make sense because in the Halloween episode that we've seen clips from a bunch, we see Wanda and Vision in Halloween costumes that allude to the way that they look in the comics. We see kind of a classic comic Wanda, and we have Vision in his comic outfit. We also see a clip in the very first trailer of Agnes dressed as a witch. So if Wanda and Vision are wearing costumes that allude to the way that they are in the comics, then I think it's safe to assume that Agnes dressing up as a witch alludes to the fact that she is in fact Agatha. In the comics, Agatha was kind of like a mentor to Wanda. She kind of helped her learn her powers and grow in her powers. And so far in the 2 episodes that we've seen, Agnes is sort of a mentor to Wanda. She's kind of teaching her how to be a housewife, if that makes sense. She gives her some friendly advice. She helps her cook. She's kind of mentoring her, just not in her powers. She's mentoring her in how to be a housewife. But in the comics, at least, they were so close that Wanda referenced her as Aunt Agatha a lot. And that's kind of a little Easter egg in the second episode. If you missed it, there's a little like Bewitched sort of intro. And when it's at the shopping scene, in the back, there is a poster that says Auntie A's kitty litter. And in the comics, Agatha has like a cat. I think its name's like Ebony or something, but she has a cat and she's called Aunt Agatha. So I think that that's definitely an Easter egg, like alluding to Aunt Agatha, right? Because we've said this before on my channel. Everything that Marvel does is intentional. Literally everything. So Agatha was Wanda's mentor, but their relationship kind of like went really downhill, like the more unstable Wanda got. This part is like super, super confusing, and I think I understood it correctly, and if I get it wrong, I apologize in advance. But from what I grasped from the situation, Wanda has kids. In the comics, Wanda has kids, and then Agatha claims that these kids are just fragments of Mephisto's soul. So she like gives them to Mephisto, and I think he like absorbs the kids. Whatever, we'll get to that later. But basically, Wanda has kids. Agatha kind of takes those kids from her and wipes Wanda's memory. And later, when Wanda finds out about this, she, and I quote, this is not my language, this is from the website Fandom's language. Scarlet Witch murders Agatha in cold blood. That's kind of the gist of what you need to know about Agnes / Agatha. Just know that as of right now, she's like the nosy neighbor, but she's definitely turning into a more important character. I haven't thought about this too much because I didn't really care to, but Soups brought this point up to me. Soups is like really curious about Agnes's husband, Ralph I think his name is. I'm pretty sure he thinks that Ralph is like Doctor Strange and Agatha has him locked in like the house or something like that. I don't know what exactly his theory is, but all I know is that he's super interested in Agnes's husband. So I feel like we should all keep an eye out for that. So next we have SWORD. It's not really a character, it's an organization. SWORD is kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D., but for extraterrestrial, space, alien kind of things. In the comics, SWORD stands for Sentient World Observation and Response Department. But in WandaVision, it's changed. It stands for Sentient Weapon Observation Response Division. I don't think the difference between department and division is a big deal, but I do think that the difference between world and weapon is a really big deal, because there's world observation and weapon observation are two different things. And we see at the end of the first episode that somebody is watching Wanda, dare I say, observing. And we see them close a notebook and we see the SWORD logo on it. We see the SWORD logo on the screen. So SWORD is definitely watching Wanda in this world. They're observing her in this world. So is Wanda a weapon to SWORD? I just think it's interesting that they decided to change the acronym. We see a little bit of SWORD. We didn't know it at the time, but in the end credit scene of Far From Home, we see Nick Fury like in space. He's on some like space operation type ship or whatever with a bunch of scrolls. And that definitely leads into Secret Invasion, but that's also probably him developing SWORD after S.H.I.E.L.D. no longer exists. I think that this is how Darcy will tie into WandaVision, I feel like. There is an alternate ending for Thor. It's a scene where Dr. Selvig is like talking to a bunch of people. He's talking about cross-referencing databases and he mentions SWORD. So that alternate ending, I guess, was supposed to bring SWORD into the MCU at the time, but they decided to go with something else. The last character we're gonna go over before I get into my sort of theories and like Easter eggs kind of thing is Mephisto. We have not met Mephisto yet, but he's definitely showing up. I think Evan Peters is supposed to play him, but I also don't think we know for sure. I don't know too much about Mephisto, and at this point, my brain kind of hurts, so I didn't do too much research. But basically, Mephisto's soul was used by Wanda to give birth to her twins, Tommy and Billy. And then Mephisto reabsorbed them, essentially killing the twins. That's when Wanda got her memory wiped, blah, blah, blah. And then somehow, I don't know how, but then somehow her twins are reborn as Speed and Wiccan. I don't know the science behind it. I just know that he's connected and he's gonna show up at some point. Here's one character that I think really kind of shocked everybody, kind of confused everybody. At the very end of episode 2, we see this dude crawl out of a sewer. He's in a Beekeeper suit. There is no villain in Marvel called the Beekeeper. I looked it up. I was confused. I was like, why is this? He has a SWORD logo on the back of his bee suit too. So I was really confused. I was like, what is SWORD doing? And why does Wanda seem scared of SWORD? like she was like, no, and we will have time. So I was thinking about it, doing my research. Turns out that there is an organization called AIM. I think we've actually been introduced to AIM before in the movies. I think it's in Iron Man 3, I want to say, with Aldrich Killian. Basically, AIM stands for Advanced Idea Mechanics. They're like a really evil sort of organization, hell-bent on world domination, as evil organizations always are. If you look it up, the suits that AIM members wear heavily resemble Beekeeper suits. So when I saw that, I was like, interesting. And then I was like, so if that could hypothetically be AIM, why is there a sword logo on the back of the Beekeeper suit? So I looked into it, and in the comics, AIM was actually founded by Baron von Strucker, who has a little cameo Easter egg type thing in the second episode of WandaVision with his watch. So I think that because we all know Hydra is a branch off of like Nazis. So Hydra is a branch off of that. And then AIM is a branch off of that, if that makes sense. So I think that when Hydra like latched onto S.H.I.E.L.D., I think AIM came with it, and then S.H.I.E.L.D. fell apart. So then I think, and so did Hydra, but I think AIM like latched itself onto S.W.O.R.D. Because I feel like S.W.O.R.D. was in the making for a while. So AIM is now in S.W.O.R.D. And I think that the S.W.O.R.D. that we're seeing in the show, S.W.O.R.D. that is supposed to be a good organization, it's not S.W.O.R.D. I think that it's AIM disguising themselves as S.W.O.R.D. This would also explain why in the trailers we see Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man and the Wasp show up with military and FBI. Because I remember, and I literally said it in my WandaVision trailer analysis, who is it? And why do they have people that look like they're in the army with them? Insane. I feel like the FBI wouldn't be... The reason why I feel like the FBI would not be in charge of handling something that is so supernatural like Wanda's powers. Which is why I'm confused why Agent Wu was there. I was like, why are the military and the FBI showing up if S.W.O.R.D. is already there? Because S.W.O.R.D. is supposed to deal with this kind of creepy extraterrestrial supernatural stuff. Like, that's what S.W.O.R.D. does. Why are the military and the FBI there if S.W.O.R.D. is, like, S.W.O.R.D. should be handling it? But if S.W.O.R.D. isn't S.W.O.R.D., take a shot every time I say S.W.O.R.D. Alcohol poisoning. If it's not S.W.O.R.D., if it's AIM, then they're not there to help the situation. They're making the situation worse. That's why we hear Wu on the radio being like, Wanda, like, do you read me? Who's doing this to you? Who's doing this to you? That's what I think. That's my theory. I think it's a pretty good theory. Also, you'd be surprised at the amount of imagery WandaVision has to Wizard of Oz. They both deal with false realities. There's the obvious transition of like black and white to color. There's a clip in the trailers of Agnes riding her bike, and it's like a dead ringer for the Wicked Witch of the West. That could allude to Agatha being one of the villains in WandaVision. I think it's interesting that WandaVision takes place in Westview. That could be something I'm totally making up and like pulling out of my ass, but I don't know, I think it's interesting. And then there's also, you know, in The Wizard of Oz, the people that Dorothy meets in Oz do directly correlate to like people in her real life. Like the Wicked Witch of the West is like her really rude neighbor. The wizard is Professor Marvel, no pun intended. Same thing in WandaVision. We have Monica, who is Monica in the real world, but in this false reality, she's Geraldine. Same thing with Agatha. She's Agatha in the real world, but she's introducing herself as Agnes. And also in one of the trailer shots, we see Wanda and Vision on a bike, like pedaling through town or whatever. Behind them, on like on the movie theater, you see Oz the Great and Powerful is playing. So I think that's interesting. There's a tiny little Easter egg. If you blink, you miss it. I didn't see it, but I did see it in an article I read. There's a little reference to possibly the Grim Reaper showing up. The Grim Reaper does have a connection to Vision. I don't know if they would or how they could tie it into the show, but I do think it's interesting that his helmet is there. There's another Easter egg in the first episode where a wine bottle is pouring, and when I was watching it, I was like, the label is definitely being pointed at us to like make sure we notice it, and the wine bottle's in French. So I texted my sister and I asked her to translate it for me because she took French, and she said that I'm gonna butcher this, it says like Maison du Mépris. Basically she said that it translates to House of Mépris or House of Misery, I think. but whatever it is, it does translate to House of M, which is an Easter egg, because either the storyline of WandaVision will bring us into the House of M, or just WandaVision is in fact heavily inspired by the comic storyline of House of M. Because in the House of M storyline, Wanda goes completely insane and like completely alters reality, and that's WandaVision's definitely heavily inspired by that. I don't know if that's the direction that the show's going to go in, or if it's just inspired by that idea, but it's definitely an Easter egg. I don't know if this is actually an Easter egg. It's just something that I picked up on because I know that Marvel would never do anything that's not intentional. The house number that Wanda and Vision live at is 2800, and so I did my research. In a comic series in 2015, Vision takes residence in a suburban street, and the house number that he lives at is 616, which is a reference to Earth 616. So I looked it up. There is an Earth 2800. Kind of confusing. Something about like the new Avengers, not the young Avengers, but like the new Avengers. There was a whole thing. Obviously, it's a different reality, but I thought it was interesting. It could be a reality that is opened or tapped into in Doctor Strange. I don't necessarily know what the point of it is yet, but I do know that I feel like it will be important. There's kind of the more obvious Easter eggs, like the two commercials that we see. We see a Stark Industries toaster and we see a Strucker watch. So obviously Strucker is Baron von Strucker, and there's literally a Hydra symbol on the watch, so we know that that's not good. But the Stark Industries commercial is a little bit off-putting. It's a toaster, so it should be a normal commercial, but it's not. When they push down on the toaster, it sounds like one of Tony's blasters, like recharging. And also, it makes like a really unsettling sort of ticking noise.
Handle anything, from meatloaf to cherry pie to open-faced cheese sandwiches.
And I saw somebody say this on Twitter that it could be a reference to the way that Wanda's parents died due to Stark technology. A bomb blew up. Halfway through the commercial, the light on the toaster starts to blink red when everything else is black and white. So I think that's a little sketchy. You can come say hi.
Are you live on something?
No, I'm filming. You can sit in the back if you want, I don't care.
Hello.
Hi, I'm talking about the toaster.
Cool. You're filming YouTube videos?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Go ahead.
I'm not going to do it if you're just standing there. So it starts like blinking red like halfway through, which is not good. Basically, I feel like beeping Stark technology doesn't sit well with Wanda, and it's a very unsettling commercial. The people look really uncomfortable. Someone said that those two people could possibly be like Wanda's parents, or at least like a metaphor of Wanda's parents. I don't know. It was just a very weird and unsettling commercial. And even like the tagline for the toaster is like, "Forget your past, this is your future." I don't know. It just didn't sit right. I do want the toaster though. One thing that I picked up on that kind of leads me into kind of a second theory I have, but it's kind of an incomplete theory. In the first episode, when they're trying to figure out the date on the calendar, Vision is like, "Well, Wanda, I'm incapable of forgetting." And I was like, yeah, you are. You're a robot. You're not supposed to forget stuff. You can't forget stuff. But he forgot the date. He forgot his own death. So I don't think that that's Vision. Like, not only, like, I don't even think that it's a vision of Wanda's imagination. Like, I think that it's like an illusion for Wanda, not made by Wanda. And it's funny that I would say he's an illusion because in their magic act in the second episode, his nickname is Illusion. But I don't know, he's just not acting like Vision. Not even just personality wise, because obviously they're acting like they're in a sitcom, but just like when the tree branch is hitting the window, like Vision is scared. He's like, "What is that?" Versus like in Civil War, a literal explosion happens outside of the window and he goes, "Stay here," and he just goes right through the wall to see what's going on. Those are two very different people. Two very different Visions. I don't think that Vision is Vision. And I think that when Wanda finds out that that's not Vision, I think it's gonna be like the last straw, I feel like. That about does it for the research that I did on WandaVision. I hope this helped anybody that was confused, because I sure know I was. Hopefully that cleared a couple things up. Let me know what you thought of WandaVision. I've heard mixed things. I know Chris liked it. He actually, I'm not going to say anything because you can go to his channel to watch us talk about our feelings and opinions. I'm glad that Marvel is getting to explore not only the territory of a TV show, but like the territory of a different vibe of a TV show, like the sitcom stuff. Like, I think that's awesome. I am looking forward to it being in color, and I am looking forward to it being in different eras because I'm not the biggest 50s, 60s person, but I am super excited for next week and I cannot wait. So let me know how you feel about WandaVision so far. Let me know what you think about the characters. Like, do you have any theories? I want to hear them. So let me know. I will talk to you guys next time. Okay, bye.